Hello, welcome to our virtual Justice on the Block Legal Information Clinic. This clinic is part of the virtual series Know Your Child's Education Right. This session, we're going to be talking about alternatives to a traditional high school diploma. I am Stephanie Johnson, Senior Attorney in the Tallahassee Office of Legal Services in North Florida, and with me is Cheryl Sadler, our Educational Advocate with Legal Services in North Florida. Just a quick housekeeping note, this video provides legal information and should not be considered legal advice. This video does not create an attorney-client relationship or substitute for legal advice you've been given. You may have defenses that we haven't discussed here, so seeking out an attorney for legal help is always advisable. For more information about legal services in North Florida, you could go to our website, which is www.lsnf.org. or call 850-385-9007. So thank you for joining us today. Cheryl, having a high school diploma is important. It decides whether students can go to college, get some kind of career training, or enter the military. We also know that not every student will graduate from high school, unfortunately. Today, we want to talk about how high school graduation works and what alternatives there are. So what are the current high school graduation requirements?
Sure. So I just want to note that this is 2023 and these requirements do change. So right now, students who attend public schools, and that includes charter schools, have to have a certain number of credits and have to pass a set of specific tests. And today we're just going to talk about the tests, really. There's a 10th grade reading and writing test and an Algebra 1 end of course test. And then also, not only did the test change, but the scores that students need to pass the test also changes. In fact, they've just changed. So the current requirements are in the document that we've linked to in the chat. Students usually take these tests at the end of the school year. And of course, they take the Algebra 1 test when they've taken Algebra 1. But if they fail, they can also retake those tests. So it's not one shot and you're entirely out of the picture.
So are there any other tests that students can take, any different tests than these normal tests?
Sure. So there's a lot of kids that take alternative tests. And basically, once a student has taken those tests I just talked about and failed them, so they have to first try those tests, they have some options. And instead of the reading writing tests, students can take the SAT or the ACT English and Reading, or a new test called the Classical Learning Test, Verbal Reasoning and Grammar Writing sections. And those are also in the link. Then, of course, there's a different set of tests that they can take instead of Algebra 1. They can take the PSAT/NMSQT. Don't you love these letters? Math, SAT Math, ACT Math, or the Classical Learning Test Quantitative Reasoning section. Or they can take the Geometry End of Course exam. So I'm not giving you all these names to make you write them down or memorize them. It's really just to say that, yeah, the state has taken the time to look at some other alternatives and said, all right, if you take this other test and you pass at this specific level, it will count the same as if you took the state test and passed it. So that's a great alternative. It's particularly important for our English learners. They have a much higher pass rate on, for example, the ACT than they do on the state test.
So what if they can't get a score that's high enough on any of these tests?
That's kind of the bad news of this call. Right now, a student who doesn't pass the regular tests or these alternative tests don't get a high school diploma, which means that instead of getting a diploma, they may get something called the Certificate of Completion, which I have to tell you is pretty worthless. It's not enough to get into community college. It's not enough to get into many training programs. You can't get financial aid for college or training, and you also can't enlist in the military. And I did want to, a lot of our kids are looking at military options. So there is a specific link that I put in the chat on the requirements of the U.S. military.
Is there any other way for a student to earn a high school diploma?
Okay, now this is the good news part of the call. There are actually a few ways. And I have to say that districts up to this point have done a really bad job of telling kids about these options. And there's a new law in the state of Florida that says that districts do have to tell parents about these options, but it's a lot to take in. So there are a few ways. The first, which is only available in about 20 school districts, is called the performance-based exit option. And frankly, I cannot explain the requirements to you. They're really complicated. So parents want to go ahead and contact their school district and find out more about that. And there's a link for those contacts. Then there is something called a career pathway, which at least is a better name. A student still has to earn 18 credits. So that's less than the 24 that they usually need. And then 2 of those credits are in career tech, 2 more in work-based learning. And again, we've given you a link to some information, but districts are going to be really specific about this. So this is a great option for kids who really know that they're not going to go to college or very focused on a particular career or an area and, want sort of more practical training. I don't know about you, Steph, but when I was in high school, I was always like, why do I have to learn this? This is for those kids. There's another that's called Excel. It's also 18 credits. And again, every district is a little bit different. So there's a link to that. But I want to really spend most of our time today talking about an option that districts don't have to tell parents about, and they usually don't. And that's called, it's a test. It used to be called the High School Equivalency Diploma Program. Now we just call it the GED. And not every kid can take it, of course. Students who are 18 and not enrolled in school can do whatever they want. They can take the test, they can do their own thing. But a lot of kids want to take it earlier. They want to take it at 16 or 17. And you can understand that. You start to think, all right, what's next? And just how much algebra do I really need? And right now, those kids can only take the test under what's called extraordinary circumstances. So you're a lawyer. You always want to know what things mean. And I know you want to know what extraordinary circumstances is. And it's a terrible answer. It's up to every school district. I think extraordinary circumstances would be things like, they're really looking to see, can we keep this kid in school and give them a regular diploma, or are they likely to drop out? And so the circumstances are going to be all over the map, but that's really what they're thinking about. I looked up a list of district contracts who can tell a student or their parent exactly what the process is there. And sometimes the student has to take GED classes before they can take the test. I really wish I could give you really straightforward answers, but this is a pretty complicated kind of path to get. But here's the punchline. If you pass the GED, you get your high school diploma. Nobody asks later, well, how'd you do on algebra? You get the same diploma.
Okay. So we're taking this alternative test called a GED. What does that look like? What does a GED test look like?
Well, I know that it doesn't sound great as an option, right? If you failed these other tests, you're probably not looking forward to taking yet another test. But the GED is a little bit different. It has 4 parts. It has a math part, a language arts part, social studies, and science. Here's the nice part. Students can take them all together if that's what they want to do, or they can take them just one part at a time. So obviously, the whole test takes about 7 hours, but if you just take one part, it's a lot shorter. You can study in between, you can take breaks, whatever you need to do. You do have to pass all 4 parts. There's another little bonus, and that is if you score at a really high level, you may get to skip some college classes if college is where you're headed, or you might even get credit for those classes. And here's another really cool part about the GED. If you fail one part, you don't have to take the whole thing again. You can take that one part again, and you can actually go to a testing center to take the test. You can take the test online. This is not something schools do. But testing centers are just look like big computer centers. You have a computer and a little wall between you and the other people taking the test. You do have to pay to take the GED, and each part is about $32 to $38. It actually is a little less expensive if you go into the testing center than if you take it at home. So the whole price is about $120. And probably the best thing to do is to follow the link that we've given you to the GED site. There's a lot more information there, and it's pretty user friendly.
And so I just know this from working with my clients. So if the students have an IEP in grade school where they get extra time for tests and in a smaller classroom, when they go onto the GED.com, if they give them their IEP, they will also get extra time for their GED, and they will also be allowed to go into a smaller setting so that it's not so noisy and distracting for them. So just aside.
Very important.
How does a student prepare? So say they're like, okay, I'm going to do the GED, I have extraordinary circumstances, everything. How does that student start preparing to take the GED?
Right. Well, obviously, some of the stuff they need for the GED, they've already learned in high school. So you're not starting from zero. But you can take a practice test to see how you do. There are GED prep classes, and you can do those online, which is, really nice. The practice test is a really good way to figure out what you need to study. You might score really high in English language arts, but not so high in math. So then you'd need to focus on math. It usually takes 2 to 3 months for a student to fully prepare. So a student should not think, I'm going to sign up today, I'm going to take the test tomorrow, and presto, it's magic. It's not magic. But there are low-cost or free GED prep programs. Libraries have them, community centers, community colleges, and generally asking actually at your library or your school guidance can generally point you to those kind of resources.
Mm-hmm. So can you take, if you don't do well on the GED the first time, can you take it again?
Yes. You can, the crazy thing is you can actually take it immediately again. I don't know, maybe you have this like regret, oh, I should have, answered these 10 questions this other way. After you do that a couple times, so they make you wait so that you can go study. You can see it'd be really frustrating to just sit there and retake it and not do any better. And of course you have to pay every time. So, it's not free.
So you're talking about what's going on in 2023, and it seems like the law changes frequently. We added this extraordinary circumstances language to the law recently. So is this situation likely to change in Florida?
Interestingly, nothing ever stays the same. I guess it's a full employment for me law. I don't know. For 16 and 17-year-olds, the Florida legislature is actually looking at letting students take the GED if they want to. So they wouldn't have to go through the process of getting approved for extraordinary circumstances. We aren't going to know what happens, of course, until the legislative session ends and the governor signs or doesn't sign. So if a student right now thinks, I'd really like to take this test, but I don't really have any circumstances that are extraordinary that might convince a district, they might want to just check back in about 9 months and see. Now, obviously, delaying your education and the end of the education is not a great thing. So if you think you have a shot at all, you should probably try the district already. But if you can't make through that particular hurdle, it looks like there might be help on the way.
All right. All right. Thank you very much, Cheryl. This is all super useful information.
Thanks, Steph.